Real monsters don't come with sharp claws or glowing eyes. They show up with a bouquet of roses, sweet promises, and a shiny ring on one knee. They build a life with you, give you kids, and then, once they've settled deep in your heart, they start chipping away at your soul. The worst part? Nobody hears you scream because to the outside world, you're the picture-perfect family. I'm Josephine Marie Connors, Josie to everyone who knows me. At 85, I've been carrying a secret for over 50 years, one that's eaten at me like rust on an old pickup truck. I grew up in Millfield, a sleepy little town in rural Pennsylvania, where the mornings are crisp and the nights hold family secrets tighter than a banker holds a vault. Around here, folks know me as the sweet old lady selling homemade snickerdoodles at the Sunday farmers market, always in a floral dress with a scarf hiding my white hair. Nobody guesses the weight I've carried since I was 23. Sharing this story shakes me to my core, so if it resonates with you, drop a like, maybe subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're reading from. It helps me feel like my words might reach someone who needs them. I'm not telling this for me. I've learned to live with this burden. It's for all the women out there facing their own private hells behind closed doors, staying quiet out of fear, shame, or to shield their kids. Maybe my story will spark the courage I took so long to find. My life started simple, like most girls in rural Pennsylvania back in the 1950s. My dad, Anthony, worked the cornfields, up before dawn and home after the stars came out. My mum, Sarah, ran the house, raised 5 kids, and still found time to sew quilts for the market. I was the middle kid, sandwiched between 2 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. Our house was modest, wooden floors, a leaky roof letting in slivers of sunlight, but we always had enough to eat and plenty of love. Dad, bone-tired from the fields, never failed to flash us a grin and never once raised a hand to Mom. A rarity back when husbands often ruled like kings. "Study hard, Josie, so you don't need a man to lean on," Mum would say, her hands guiding mine over quilt stitches. And I listened. I was the only one of us 5 kids to finish elementary school at our little community schoolhouse. My teacher, Miss Eleanor, saw something in me. "This girl's got a spark, Anthony," she told my dad. "It'd be a shame to let it fade." With my parents' sacrifices, I became a teacher myself at 19 in 1966. For a farmer's daughter, that was like winning the lottery. I'll never forget Dad's eyes brimming with pride when I taught my first class in that same schoolhouse. "You're your mother's daughter, but with a book instead of a needle," he said, voice cracking. For 3 years I taught Millfield's kids, earning a small paycheck that helped keep the lights on at home. Most girls my age were already married with a kid or 2, but I was single, pouring my heart into my students. The town busybodies didn't hold back. "She'll end up a spinster," they'd whisper. "Too much book learning scares off husbands." I brushed it off, but late at night I'd admit I sometimes felt a pang of loneliness. Then came the 4th of July barbecue in 1969. That's when I met Charles. He'd rolled into town from Philly to work as an accountant at Millfield's new bank. Tall, fair-skinned, with slicked-back hair and a polished way of talking that screamed big city education. When he asked me to dance, my heart did a somersault. "May I have this dance, Miss Josie?" he asked, smooth as a summer breeze. I said yes, cheeks burning with nerves and thrill. We danced 3 songs straight, then grabbed lemonade from a stand in the town square. "I've never met a teacher as beautiful as you," he said, locking eyes with me in a way that stole my breath. I laughed. "You're just trying to fluster me, Mr. Charles." That night kicked off a whirlwind courtship that had the whole town buzzing. The same old ladies who'd called me a future spinster now swore I'd hit the jackpot. Charles wasn't some rich city heir, just a guy who'd clawed his way through school like me. For 6 months we courted, chaperoned walks in the square, movie dates in the next town over, always with my dad or a brother nearby. Charles was a gentleman, bringing me small gifts, a hair ribbon, a chocolate bar, even a poetry book we'd read together on my porch. One chilly December night, under the apple tree in our yard, He got down on one knee. "Josie, I want to make you my wife," he said, my brother eyeing us from the porch. My heart nearly burst. At 23, I'd started to think marriage wasn't my path, but here was this kind, educated man proposing. "I'll need to think it over, Charles," I said, playing it cool, but I was already sold. A week later, he showed up with a bottle of bourbon and a cigar to talk to Dad. They talked for hours while Mom, my sisters and I fidgeted in the kitchen. When Dad walked in, his serious face broke into a grin. "He's a good man, Josie. You've got my blessing." We got married in March 1970 in Our Lady's tiny chapel. It wasn't fancy. My dress was handmade by Mum and my aunts, and Charles wore a borrowed navy suit. But it was perfect. We celebrated in our yard with homemade food and music from local guitarists. Charles had rented us a cosy 2-bedroom house near the bank, complete with an indoor bathroom, a luxury I'd never known. Those first months were a dream. Wildflowers from Charles, his laughter at my overcooked dinners, and quiet nights where he treated me with such care. I kept teaching, even after the wedding. Most husbands would have balked, but Charles bragged about his brainy wife. "My Josie's got a mind as sharp as her heart," he'd say. When I found out I was pregnant 6 months later, it felt like the cherry on top. Charles cried when I told him, hands shaking as he touched my belly. "It's gonna be a girl just like you," he said, like he could see her already. He was right. Mary Ann came into the world on a sweltering January morning in 1971 after a grueling 20-hour labour. When the doctor handed me that red squalling bundle, I knew I'd never love anything more. Charles looked at her with the same awe. "She's got your eyes, Josie," he said, using the nickname that stuck. In that moment, with my husband, my daughter, and my teaching, I thought I'd found paradise. But as Mum used to say, the devil can wear a suit and smile before he shows his teeth. That's a story for another day, one I'm not quite ready to tell. For now, think about this. How often do we judge a book by its cover? How many times is the monster, "We fear the one we vowed to love forever"? If this hits home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes another's pain lights the path to healing our own. The weeks after Mary Ann's birth were a blur of joy, despite the sleepless nights and first-time mom jitters. Charles was a rock, coming home early from the bank to change diapers or sing her to sleep with a voice I didn't know he had. Our late-night talks about the future shifted to marvelling over our little girl who'd stolen our hearts. "She's got your nose, Josie," he'd say, grinning over the crib my brother had carved for her. I went back to teaching when Mary Ann was 3 months old. Leaving her with my sister-in-law, who lived just down the street, was tough, but standing in front of my students, chalk in hand, felt like coming home. Charles backed me up, though sometimes he'd mention that with more kids, I might want to stay home. I nodded along, not thinking much of it, still wrapped in the glow of our perfect little life. Back in the early 70s, a woman working outside the home was practically a rebel with a cause. Mary Ann's first year zipped by like a summer breeze. Before I knew it, she was scooting across the floor, flashing a gummy grin with those 2 tiny bottom teeth, babbling "Dada" to Charles before she ever said "Mama." Charles was smitten, splurging on toys we couldn't quite afford, dreaming big about her future. "Our princess is going to go to a top-notch school, Josie," he'd say. "Doctor, lawyer, whatever she dreams of being." Life rolled on like a lazy river. Mary Ann grew into a bubbly little girl, healthy and chirpy as a sparrow. I kept teaching, now at Millfield's bigger school, promoted for my hard work and love for the kids. Charles was climbing the ladder at the bank, landing a supervisor gig. To everyone in town, we were the all-American family, straight out of a Norman Rockwell painting. But when Mary Ann turned 3 in 1974, I started noticing cracks in the picture. Charles wasn't the same. He'd come home from work quieter, grumbling about my cooking, the grocery bills, or Mary Ann's playful giggles. "A man busts his hump all day," he'd snap. "He needs some peace when he gets home." I chalked it up to stress. His new role meant longer hours, bigger pressure. I tried to smooth things over, cooking his favourite pot roast, hushing Marianne when he walked in, chasing that charming smile I fell for at the 4th of July barbecue back in '69. But one night he came home fuming over a botched account at the bank, blaming some poor guy under him. "That idiot's gonna pay," he growled over dinner, his words sharp as a switchblade. I tried to calm him down, sliding extra mashed potatoes onto his plate. "It's probably just a mix-up, Charles. You'll sort it out tomorrow." Big mistake. He slammed the table so hard the dishes rattled, and Marianne burst into tears. "Don't tell me how to do my job, woman," he roared. "What do you know about my work?" I froze. In 5 years of marriage, he'd never yelled like that. The man glaring at me was a stranger, his face twisted with a rage I didn't recognise. I scooped up Marianne, soothing her sobs, while he stormed out, slamming the door. He stumbled back late, reeking of bourbon. I lay still in bed, pretending to sleep, heart pounding with a fear I couldn't name. The next morning he was all smiles, brewing coffee, tickling Marianne, pecking my cheek like nothing happened. I almost convinced myself it was a one-off, a bad day. But it wasn't. The outbursts came more often, sparked by the smallest things. A new dress I bought for Marianne, dinner not being ready, even the stack of math tests I brought home to grade. "You're neglecting our kid for those brats who aren't even yours," he shouted one night, ripping my students' papers to shreds. I started tiptoeing around my own house, watching every word, every move, trying to guess what might set him off. Marianne felt it too. My bright, chatty girl turned quiet around her dad, shrinking like she wanted to disappear. Neighbours started asking questions. "Josie, you okay? You look worn out." Or, "Charles seems on edge lately." I'd brush it off with a smile. Just life, you know. Mom always said family troubles stay in the family, and I still loved the man Charles used to be, or at least I clung to that hope. In 1976, when Marianne was 5, Charles got another promotion, branch manager, a big deal for a guy his age. The bank threw a fancy party, complete with a mayor's speech and champagne, my first taste of the stuff. Charles glowed that night, back to the charming guy who'd swept me off my feet. He paraded me around, beaming, "This is my wife, Josie, the best teacher in Millfield." For a moment I believed we could rewind the clock. For a few weeks we did. He brought home little gifts again. A hairpin, a candy bar, played with Marianne, complimented my cooking. I let my guard down, dared to smile without bracing for a storm. Then I got pregnant again. When I told Charles, he spun me around the living room, laughing like he did when we found out about Marianne. "It's a boy this time, Josie," he declared, like he could will it true. "A son to take on the bank someday." Those months were calm, like the Charles that I loved had wrestled his demons back. I cut back my teaching hours, with my principal's blessing, to focus on my health. Marianne was thrilled about being a big sister, already picking out toys for the baby. Our son arrived in June 1977, a sturdy boy with my dark skin and Charles's pale blue eyes. Charles named him Richard. "A strong name for a future tycoon," he said, cradling him like he was made of glass. At first things were good. Charles juggled work and home, taking Marianne for walks on weekends while I tended to the baby. But when Richard hit 4 months, he started getting sick. Nothing major, just colds and fevers, but enough to keep us up with his crying. That's when the darkness crept back. Richard's wails grated on Charles. "I can't think with this racket," he'd yell, slamming doors. Marianne, now 6, went silent around him again, her big eyes wary. One night, after a rough day at the bank, Charles came home to a messy house. Richard had been feverish, Marianne spilled juice on the rug, and I was too exhausted to keep up my usual tidiness. "What is this dump?" he bellowed, stepping into the living room. "I bust my tail all day, and this is what I come home to?" "Charles, please," I begged, rocking a fussy Richard. "The baby's sick. I didn't have time." I never finished. His hand flew up, and the slap hit my cheek so hard I stumbled, nearly dropping Richard. Mary Ann screamed from the doorway, "Daddy, no!" Charles froze, staring at his hand like it belonged to someone else, then at me, my face stinging red, and Richard wailing louder. Without a word he turned and left, the door's slam echoing in my ears. That night shattered any dreams I had left about our marriage. The man who'd vowed to cherish me had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. As I pressed ice to my cheek and rocked Richard to sleep, Mary Ann curled up beside me. "Mommy, why was Daddy so mad?" she whispered, her voice tiny. How do you tell a 6-year-old that sometimes people change, that something breaks inside them and lets out a darkness even they don't understand? "Daddy's just tired, sweetheart," I said, hating the lie. Sometimes grown-ups do bad things when they're tired. She nodded, too wise for her years, and rested her head in my lap. "It'll be okay, Mummy. I'll take care of you and Ricky." My heart cracked hearing her say that. No child should feel they need to protect their mum. Lying there with my kids sleeping beside me, rain tapping the window, I vowed to find a way out for them. I didn't know then that the worst was still coming, that the monster inside Charles hadn't shown its ugliest face yet, and when it did, my world would turn upside down in ways I couldn't imagine. Some monsters don't just break your heart, they shatter your whole world piece by piece while you're still trying to hold it together. I was always rushing, barely sleeping, eating on the fly, scrubbing the house spotless to keep Charles from finding something to gripe about. But it was never enough. One day it was dinner not being hot enough. The next, Mary Ann's dolls scattered in the living room. Then Richard's crying was too much. His complaints came with colder stares, sharper words. "A woman who can't keep a house doesn't deserve to be called a wife," he'd sneer, smashing a plate, my mum's wedding gift, into the sink. I'd choke back tears, sweep up the shards, tuck the kids in, and lie in bed as far from him as I could get. I told myself it was just a rough patch, that the stress of his bank job was getting to him, that the old Charles would come back. "Men have their moods," my neighbour Mrs. Connie said when she caught me with puffy eyes. "You gotta be patient, Josie. That's marriage." So I prayed every single day, begging God to bring back the man I fell for. But it felt like my prayers hit a brick wall. That first slap in '77 opened a new ugly chapter. It wasn't just the sting on my cheek. It was realizing the man who vowed to love me had broken something sacred right in front of our daughter. "Mommy, don't cry," Mary Ann would whisper, her tiny hands wiping my tears as I rocked Richard after one of Charles's outbursts. "I'll take care of you." Hearing that from a 6-year-old broke me. What kind of mum was I, letting my daughter comfort me? What was I teaching her about what a woman should endure? Charles would swing between grovelling, bringing daisies, swearing it'd never happen again, and new rages over nothing. A late dinner, a toy out of place. Mary Ann changed too. My butterfly-chasing girl turned quiet, head down, flinching when her dad raised his voice. On Sundays, when he took her for park walks, she'd come back silent, eyes distant in a way no 7-year-olds should be. "Don't you want to go with Daddy any more, sweetie?" I asked one day when she hid under her bed as Charles called her. "No, Mommy," she said, voice trembling. "I don't want to be alone with him." Her words hit like a punch. I wanted to press her, to understand that fear, but Charles was already at the door barking. "What's this nonsense? Stop coddling her, Josie. Get up, girl." He yanked her arm, dragging her out as her eyes pleaded with me. I stayed home with Richard, a sick feeling twisting my gut. When they got back, Mary Ann bolted to her room without a word. Charles acted normal, even sweet, handing her a bag of candy. But something was wrong. That night, as I read her favourite bedtime story, she was curled tight under her blanket, like she was hiding from the world. "What happened on your walk, love?" I asked, stroking her hair. She was quiet so long I thought she was asleep. Then, in a whisper, she said, Daddy took me to a place. He said it's our secret." My heart stopped. "What place, honey?" "A house on Market Street," she said. "There's a man there who takes pictures." My blood turned to ice. "Pictures? What kind?" She shrank smaller. "I don't know. Daddy said I had to take off my dress. He got mad when I cried." I didn't sleep that night, my mind spinning with horrors. I wanted to confront Charles, but a voice in my head screamed to be careful, for the kid's sake. The next day, pretending to run errands, I walked by Market Street and spotted a dingy photography studio with a small sign. I didn't dare go in, but I watched from across the street. Charles showed up, greeting the man at the door like an old buddy before disappearing inside. I went home shaking, a sick certainty growing in my chest. Something was deeply wrong, and it was hurting my daughter. I started watching Charles like a hawk, every move, every word. I saw things I'd missed, how he insisted on bathing Marianne even though she was old enough to do it herself, how he'd pull her onto his lap when she clearly didn't want it, the way his eyes lingered when he thought I wasn't looking. One night I slipped into Marianne's room and found her crying into her pillow. "What's wrong, Angel?" I asked, sitting beside her. "Mommy," she sobbed, "I don't want Daddy in my room at night anymore. He does things that hurt." Her words were a knife to my soul. I could barely breathe. "What things, Marianne?" I asked, dreading the answer. Through tears she told me, nights when Charles crept in, thinking I was asleep, threats to keep her quiet, pain and confusion no child should ever know. I held her tight, my own tears falling. How had I been so blind? How had this happened under my roof? Guilt and rage burned through me. "Never again," I promised, cupping her face. "He'll never touch you again, I swear." That night, as Charles slept, I packed a small suitcase, clothes, a few documents, anything we'd need. I planned to slip out at dawn, take the kids to a teacher friend's place in a nearby town. But as I zipped the bag, the bedroom door creaked open. Charles stood there staring at the suitcase. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked, his voice cold as steel. "I'm leaving," I said, trying to sound brave despite the fear clawing at me. "And I'm taking my kids." He laughed, a cruel, cutting sound. "You think I'll let you take my children? You think you can survive without me? You're nothing, Josie. No house, no money, no nothing." I squared my shoulders, rage giving me strength. "I'd rather starve than live with you." "I know what you've done to Marianne, the studio, the pictures, what you do when you think I'm not looking. You're a monster, Charles." His face twisted into something feral. Before I could move, his fist slammed into my face. I fell, tasting blood, as he tore the suitcase open, scattering clothes across the floor. "You're not going anywhere," he growled, "and if you breathe a word of this, I'll end you and those kids. Who'll believe you? Me, the respected bank manager, or some hysterical teacher?" I stayed down, pretending to cower, while he spat threats. But inside, the last shred of love I had for him died. In its place was a fire to protect my kids, no matter the cost. Lying next to him that night, I made a vow. I'd get us out, even if it killed me. I didn't know it then, but the chance would come sooner than I thought, on an April night in 1979 that would sear itself into my soul. It was a Wednesday, church prayer group night. Charles hated me going, said it was a waste when I had a house to run. But that hour in the little chapel was my only peace, a shield against the fear that dogged my every step. I came home later than usual, the kids already asleep, the house quiet except for the hum of crickets outside. What happened that night would change everything, in ways I never could have seen coming. Some nights carve themselves into your soul like scars you can't hide. April 7, 1979, is one I'll carry forever. Every sound, every shadow, as vivid as if it happened yesterday. I came home late from Wednesday prayer group at church around 9 p.m. Charles hated those meetings, said I was neglecting the house for pointless praying. But that hour in the chapel was my only escape, a fleeting moment of peace in a life shadowed by fear. Richard, not quite 2, was already out cold, worn out from toddling around the yard all day. Mary Ann, 8 years old, should have been asleep too. Charles was supposedly at a bank meeting, or so he claimed. The house was eerily quiet when I stepped inside, no grumbling Charles annoyed at my tardiness. I slipped my rosary into the dresser, kicked off my shoes to stay quiet, and went to check on the kids. Richard was fine, snoozing on his tummy like always. But as I reached Mary Ann's door, a sound stopped me dead. A muffled sob, choked like someone fighting to stay silent, and Charles's low, menacing voice. "If you tell your mum, she won't believe you, and if she does, she'll blame you." I flung the door open. The sight was worse than any nightmare. Mary Ann was pressed against the wall, tears streaming, eyes wide with terror. And Charles, God help me, stood over her, pants undone. When he saw me, his face twisted into rage. "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at church." I didn't answer. Something primal roared inside me, a fury I didn't know I had. I lunged at him, yanking his hair with a strength that felt foreign. He stumbled back, shocked, as I grabbed Mary Ann and bolted from the room. "You crazy woman!" "Get back here," he yelled, fumbling with his pants and chasing us. "Run, Mary Ann, get Richard and go to Mrs. Catherine's," I whispered, shoving her toward her brother's room. She froze, eyes pleading. "Go, honey, please, I'll stop him." I don't know where the courage came from, maybe a mother's instinct, maybe pure rage. When Charles tried to push past me, I blocked him like a brick wall. "They're my kids, you monster!" I screamed, not caring who heard. He shoved me, but I clung to him, fighting like my life depended on it. Weeks earlier, I'd hidden a pair of sewing scissors under the mattress, terrified I'd need to defend myself one day. I never imagined it had come to this. As we grappled in the hallway, I broke free, darted to the bedroom and grabbed the scissors. "Stay away from us," I hissed, gripping them tight. He laughed, that cruel laugh he'd perfected. "You don't have the guts, Josie." "Don't test me, Charles," I said, my voice steady with a resolve I barely recognised. Something in my eyes made him pause, step back. Then the front door creaked open. Mary Ann had gotten Richard and run to the neighbours. Mr. Joseph from across the street stood in the living room with 2 other men. One I later recognised as Sheriff Davis. "What's all this yelling, Mrs. Josie?" Joseph asked, cautious. Charles switched gears, smooth as ever, flashing his bank manager charm. "Just a little spat, Joe. You know how wives get." But Mary Ann, my brave girl, didn't let his lie stand. "He was hurting me, Mr. Joseph," she said, voice small but clear. "He does bad things to me." Her words hung in the air like a thunderclap. The men looked at Charles, then at me, still clutching the scissors, then at Mary Ann's terrified face. That raw fear, no child could fake it. "Let's go to the station, Charles," Sheriff Davis said, his voice like steel. "This is ridiculous," Charles snapped, but his confidence was cracking. "I'm a respected man in this town." "And I'm a father of 3 girls," Davis shot back. "We'll sort this out." As they led Charles away, Mrs. Catherine wrapped me in a hug. "It's over, Josie," she said. But I knew it wasn't. In a small town like Millfield in '79, accusing a man like Charles, bank manager, pillar of the community, was like spitting into the wind. At the station, I was the one grilled. "Are you sure, Mrs. Connors? Could you have misread things? Your husband's so well liked." The questions dripped with doubt, judgment. Mary Ann was spared a formal interview thanks to Father Roman, who stormed in and demanded they treat her gently, with a doctor present. Charles was out on bail the next day. Gossip spread like wildfire. "Did Josie make it up? Maybe she's jealous he's got another woman." "That girl's always been dramatic." "Charles? No way, not a stand-up guy like him." Mrs. Catherine took us in. Since I couldn't face our house, terrified Charles would show up. Mary Ann woke screaming every night, and Richard clung to me, sensing the chaos. "It's okay, love," I'd whisper, holding Mary Ann tight. "Mommy won't let anyone hurt you again." But how could I keep that promise? I had no savings, no nearby family. My parents were gone, my siblings scattered. Then came a visit that changed everything. Father Roman showed up at Mrs. Catherine's with a woman in her 60s, elegantly dressed, radiating calm strength. "Josie, this is Mrs. Augusta Bennet, headmistress of the Girls' Academy in Harrisburg," he said. "She's here to help." Augusta took my hand, her grip steady. "Father Roman told me what happened. I'm offering you a teaching job at our academy, plus housing for you and your children. It's a 3-hour drive, a fresh start." Tears spilled over. "Why me? You don't even know me," I said. Her smile was heavy, knowing. "Let's just say I've seen this before. 20 years ago, I failed a young teacher in your shoes. She didn't make it. I swore I'd never stand by again." A week later, with Father Roman and some kind townsfolk shielding us, we boarded a bus to Harrisburg. I left behind our house, our things. None of it mattered. Mary Ann and Richard slept against me on the bus, finally free from the nightmare our home had become. Charles, I later heard, was transferred to a bank far away, the scandal swept under the rug like so many others. No trial, no real justice, but we were rid of him, and that was enough for now. In Harrisburg, Mary Ann barely spoke at first. She'd draw dark, jagged pictures that tore at my heart. Richard, too young to grasp it all, adjusted faster. I threw myself into teaching, determined to prove myself to Augusta and build a safe home for my kids. With help from a kind young doctor at the academy, Mary Ann started opening up. She revealed the abuse had gone on for months, hidden by Charles's threats and lies. "He said it was normal, Mommy," she told the doctor, her voice breaking me. "That all daddies do this with daughters they love. It was our secret." Her words crushed me. How had I missed it? How had I let my daughter carry that weight alone? Guilt clawed at me, but I knew I had to be strong, for her, for Richard, for the new life we were scraping together, one fragile step at a time. Nights spent staring at the ceiling, replaying every missed sign, every shift in Mary Ann's behaviour I brushed off as stress or just growing up. They haunt me still. Dr. Clare, the kind doctor at the academy, sat me down one day. "Josie, men like Charles are masters at hiding their darkness," she said. "They manipulate, threaten, make silence feel like the only safe choice. You acted when you knew. You saved your daughter." Her words were a balm, but the scar from that April night in '79, the moment I learned the truth, never fully faded. It's not a raw wound anymore, just a quiet reminder of the cost of blind trust, of thinking you really know the ones you love. I'm sharing this for the women and kids out there, trapped in their own silent nightmares, believing the pain is normal, or worse, their fault. If my story gives even one person the courage to break free, to know they're not alone, then every word is worth it. You can come through the darkest times, not without scars, but alive, stronger, maybe even whole again. Harrisburg was our fresh start, like stepping into a new world. The Girls' Academy, run by Mrs. Augusta, was a haven, neat gardens, hushed hallways, and a cosy apartment for us with 2 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen and bathroom. After Millfield, it felt like a mansion. Those first months were about healing. Mary Ann started sessions with Dr. Clare, who gently helped her untangle the trauma. Richard, barely 2, took to our new life like a duck to water, charming everyone with his giggles and boundless energy. I threw myself into teaching English and literature to the Academy's girls, finding solace in the rhythm of lesson plans and eager faces. By 1981, 2 years after we arrived, I saw a change in Mary Ann. One Sunday, we were on our apartment's little porch. She was 10, sketching in her notebook as usual, but the dark, jagged drawings were gone. Instead, she drew vibrant flowers, butterflies, a house with wide-open windows. "That's beautiful, sweetie," I said, hope blooming in my chest. "What's this?" She looked up, and for the first time in years I saw a spark of the girl she'd been before everything. "It's our house, Mommy, the one we'll have someday." That moment told me we were on the mend, not healed, but moving forward, scars and all. Time filled with small joys I'd once overlooked. Richard starting school, sharp and curious, Mary Ann making friends, joining activities, her smile returning bit by bit. Then, in 1985, a letter from my sister in Millfield shook our peace. Charles was back, drinking heavily, ranting about taking his kids back. "You had no right, Josie," she quoted him. Fear gripped me, cold and familiar. I showed the letter to Mrs. Augusta, who took my trembling hands. "He can't touch you here," she said. "You've got the academy, the church, and me." She was right. Charles never came. I later learned he'd attacked a bank co-worker in a drunken rage, landed in jail, and died soon after from liver failure. I felt no joy, no vengeance, just a quiet closing of a painful chapter. In 1987, 10 years after Richard's birth, and 8 since our escape, Mrs. Augusta offered me a new role, leading the Academy's expanding elementary wing. "You've got a gift for leadership, Josie," she said, "and a heart full of compassion. That's what these girls need." I took the job, nervous but eager. She was right. I found a strength I didn't know I had, forged in pain. Under my watch, we modernized the curriculum, weaving in art and music, urging the girls to question, dream, and push past society's limits. "An educated girl is a free woman" became our unofficial motto, a truth I wished I'd learned sooner. Mary Ann watched me, soaking it all in. At 17, she announced she wanted to study law. "I want to help women like us, Mommy," she said, eyes fierce with purpose, "to show them they have rights." In 1990, when she got into Penn State's law school, I wept with pride. My girl, who'd faced unimaginable horror, was turning pain into power. Richard, 13 by then, talked about becoming a doctor like Dr. Claire, wanting to help people the way she'd helped us. The 90s brought change for America and for us. Women were claiming new spaces, and I, at 46, met Sebastian, a history professor and widower with a quiet kindness that unnerved me. After Charles, I'd sworn off love, my heart walled up tight. Sebastian didn't push. With the patience of someone who'd known loss, he earned my trust slowly. It took 3 years for me to say yes to his proposal. "I'm not perfect, Josie," he said, sliding a simple ring on my finger, "just offering honest love and respect for who you are." We married in 1995 in the Academy's chapel, with Mary Ann, now a lawyer, and Richard, a medical student, as our maid of honour and best man. Mrs. Augusta, frail but sharp, gave us her blessing. With Sebastian, I learned not all men are monsters. Our 20 years together, until cancer took him in 2014, were filled with a steady, gentle happiness I never thought possible. When the past crept back, making me retreat, he'd say, "We all have scars, Josie. I'm here for the sunny days and the storms." His death left a quiet ache, but not despair. A goodbye to a companion who'd walked with me, not a jailer I'd escaped. Now, at 85 in 2025, I look back on a life of extremes, pain that nearly broke me, joy that pieced me back together. My kids are grown, with families of their own. Mary Ann's a lawyer fighting for women and kids' rights. Richard's a paediatrician, with that same gentle smile. My grandchildren grow up in homes where love and respect are non-negotiable, where they know they're safe, heard, valued. That's my greatest win, breaking the cycle of violence, writing a new story for our family. If there's one thing these 85 years taught me, it's that pain doesn't have to be the end. From the darkest ashes, something strong and beautiful can grow. Your story isn't defined by the monsters you meet, but by the choices you make to fight them. To anyone out there walking through your own shadows, hear this: you're not alone. There's a way out, a tomorrow worth fighting for. Healing feels impossible when the hurt's so raw, but trust me, you can rebuild, you can find joy again. Thank you for listening to my story. It's been a long road, and sharing it with you means more than I can say. Drop a like, subscribe, or share this with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe it'll light their way. And let me know where you're reading from. I'd love to know who's out there. Here's to new beginnings, to healing, to hope. Take care, and I'll see you on the other side of the storm.